Hello, everybody, and thank you for joining us today. We are here with the one and only Ivan Mendoza. And 2 years ago, Ivan, you were a teacher, and now you have your dream job at Apple. You're loving it. You're busy, of course, but loving it. So, Ivan's going to talk to us about how he managed to land his dream job, and he has some really great actionable tips to share along the way about how he made that happen and how hopefully all of you can do the same. So thanks for joining us here, Ivan.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
I know some people here may already know you or have seen your work. I know I've talked about you in some crowdcast, webinars like this before. But why don't we start at the beginning? We're going to take advantage of this full hour here today. And we may have time for questions later. Feel free to add your questions to the chat, but I have some questions to kind of guide us through this. But Ivan, why don't you talk to us about how you even found out about instructional design in the first place and how you started pursuing the field?
Yeah, for sure. So I started out my career as a teacher. Right after college, I was a high school English teacher, teaching 10th and 11th grade English. But after a bit, I decided it was kind of time for a change. So basically, in basically 2 years ago, like almost exactly 2 years ago in August, I already knew I wasn't going to be a teacher anymore, but I didn't know, what other options are there. So I did some Googling, and the first place I landed was the instructional design subreddit. Reddit instructional design, if you Google that, it'll take you to the right place. And basically, what I loved about it was just how open and helpful everyone else is. The community is, I just thought was awesome that there was this community of people who help people for a living and, help each other do that for a living. So I thought that was pretty cool. I jumped right in. I did as much research as I could. That's also where I landed on your resources, Devlin, because I think you had just recently published the guide for how to be an instructional designer.
Yeah.
So I was like, nice, I'm gonna use
Yeah.
this.
That was like 2 years ago exactly, pretty much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's that, and then, of course there are a bunch of other really good resources. So yeah, just did a bunch of research, thought it was good, started applying, and I had some mixed success at first. But eventually, I think in November was when I first got my first
Oh,
trainer / instructional design role.
that seems pretty good if you started in August and then by November you kind of had something lined up. So that is impressive. And yeah, the instructional design subreddit, I found my way to the same place. Like when I was starting my master's program, I was asking so many questions there, like which tools should I learn? Like which ones should I prioritize? Like so helpful. Like you said, a
Yeah,
lot of IDs there with years of experience are just helping the community. So
and
um,
you're a mod there, right? I'm pretty sure.
yeah, I am now.
Yeah,
eventually,
that's cool.
I think Chris and Anthony was or someone was asking for more mods. But yeah, I'm on there every single day. So good resource there. I also prepared some polls so we can maybe learn more about the people here. Like maybe that will help as you answer these questions.
Yeah.
So I have a question for the audience. Are you currently employed as an instructional designer? So we're going to share that one. And then the follow-up question is do you already know what your dream instructional design role is? We're going to dive into it in a second with Ivan, but it seemed like Ivan kind of knew where he wanted to wind up. But how about you? I mean, do you have a pretty clear picture of what your dream ID role or dream ID company would be? Right. It looks like we have a good mix. About 60% of the people don't know what their dream ID role is. And about 20%, 1 in 5 of us here are currently instructional designers. So thank you for coming on board and either hanging out in the chat or just thinking about how you can maybe get to where you eventually want to wind up. All right, so thank you for that. So Ivan, you said the first place you wound up was the instructional design subreddit, but were you pretty confident when you were looking for another career that instructional design would be a really good fit for you outside of teaching? Or were you considering other options?
Um, I applied to other options that were kind of, related. I think I might have, at that point, again, 2 years ago, I think I might have applied to like, I don't know, like an editor role or something,
Mm,
because my background is in English. I have a bachelor's in that.
right.
But yeah, those went nowhere. I just saw the greatest opportunity in instructional design. And I knew there was a gap, right? Because you always talk about how, like, especially for former teachers like me, like we have a really solid foundation, but there is that gap if you want to go into corporate, portfolio wise, work wise, tailoring your experience to match, corporate terminology. So I felt like that's a gap. It's a pretty decent gap, but I know I can fill that gap pretty fast if I work really hard at it. So I was pretty sold on instructional design.
Nice. And so that's what you did to land that first role right out of teaching. Did you quickly like put together a portfolio? Um,
Yeah, well, kind of. So I tried, and it was looking all right. Um, but what's cool about it is what actually part of what landed me that first job, which was like probably the best, intro to the corporate ID world that I could have asked for, was just one thing. It was just like one work sample. It
oh,
was something that I had worked on as a teacher. So as a teacher, I also sponsored this organization. It was a pretty big like organization of 100 students, and we did a lot, and it was like a full year, almost like a part-time job outside of teaching.
wow.
But it was at the school, and I remember like, okay, so what can I put in my portfolio? Well, I know, I want something that shows that I can um, facilitate learning, and also something that shows that I could work with adults. So there was one example where in the onboarding, as part of the onboarding for this organization, we work with their parents, and we basically train their parents on what the organization does, what it's about, what's expected of them.
Mm,
And so that was a live orientation, but I thought, let me just adapt that to an e-learning module. So I did that in Articulate Rise, and made it like as nice as possible.
yeah.
And I was working on my portfolio, but before I even like shipped out my portfolio for other people to see, I was already talking with people on LinkedIn, and one person in particular who was a godsend. I shared this one course with her, and she shared it with some of her friends who were hiring,
Yeah.
and one of those friends was my eventual boss, who
Wow.
was the best. So yeah, just one course
All right.
in
So
in
one
that
course.
first round. Yeah.
So not a full portfolio, but it's nice. It was something for adults. You showed that you could, turn it into this e-learning experience or course. Um, but you brought us into another interesting topic that I know you have some good stuff to share about, which is networking. So can you tell us a bit about your initial approach to networking and how you wound up like changing that approach as you went?
Yeah, yeah. So like as I said, I started in August, right? August was literally when I found out about ID. Like, okay, this looks good. Um, I started applying for jobs immediately, and basically I didn't get anywhere, right? Like
Yeah.
I made quick changes to my resume, but I didn't get anywhere in August. So when September came around, I was like, okay, this is clearly not working. I've heard in the past about how networking, I don't know what the exact statistic is, but like somewhere around like 70 or 80%, maybe higher, of jobs out there are actually one with networking, right? Networking
Wow.
has something to do with it.
Yeah. Not surprised
So,
by that.
I kind of always knew that. I've heard that stat, but I've kind of ignored it because I don't know how everyone else feels about the word networking, but to me, it's kind of like, networking. I don't know. I'm a pretty shy person in general. But I decided, you know what, let's go for it. Like, what else, what do I have to lose? And let me go ahead and, contact people. First of all, I contacted a couple of my recruiter friends to help me with my resume. So that was helpful, putting myself out there in that way. I also, on LinkedIn, after making a list of like the companies that I wanted to work for, like not companies that I could see myself working for in that moment, but literally making a list of companies that I would love to work at, even if I don't think I'm qualified or even if they don't have a job opening at that exact moment. I made a list of those companies. And in LinkedIn, you can search people by the company they work at, the position they have. So, for example, at my current company, Apple, like I literally looked up, IDs at Apple, and I tried to connect with them and start up a conversation. So, I did that for lots of different companies that I wanted to work at. But you mentioned, yeah, it was kind of a journey because it's like it's not that simple. At first I failed in that because you know how you can connect with someone, but you can write a message, yeah,
Yeah.
like personalize your invite. So I always did that, and I recommend everyone for sure, like always do that. Actually, it's funny. So when you announced this, Devlin, I think I got 22 invites from people based
Yeah.
on your advertising the session, and I want people in the chat guess how many of those 22 people sent me a personalized connection request. Okay, so you're around the ballpark, yeah.
0120530.
Two people, two
Two
people.
people.
So yeah, less than 10%. And that's not to say anything bad about the people who did not send a personalized connection, because I've done that plenty of times myself. But like, imagine how that looks. Like, you have a list of all these connection requests, and then two of them are personalized, and they say, I think one of them said like, "Hey Ivan, I heard about your session on Thursday. I'm looking forward to it. I was hoping we could connect and support each other on our ID journeys." And that's like a perfect example. It's like, thanks. So that's really all it takes. Just like something that shows you're engaging with them. You want to keep some sort of a conversation going, and it stands out in a list of connection invites. So I did that, but back to my journey. I messed up at first because in those invites, I started with an ask. So at first I was saying like, "Hey, I applied for a job at your company. I was wondering if I could ask you about something." I don't know. Like it started with some sort of ask that required them to say yes or no. But then once I switched that up, I saw that wasn't working, and I switched it up to just more of just starting on a personal connection. So what I do now these days, if I do it, is I try to find something that we have in common based on their LinkedIn profile. So it could be like where we went to school, what we studied, some sort of company that they worked at that I'm interested in, or similar industry experience. Some people write like their personal hobbies in their about, which I think is a really cool, fun, human way to connect with people. But even if there's nothing, like I don't have much in common with this person, but I still want to connect with them. I think like sincere appreciation for like their experience always works. Like this person who has 10 years of experience in ID and clearly would have some wise words of wisdom to share. I could say something like, "Hey, I noticed you have like 10 years of experience, and I'm just starting out in this industry. Oh, usually I connect with people who like share stuff on LinkedIn, content creators. So I'll also say something like, I've noticed your content. This post in particular was really helpful to me. I'd love to continue, following your thoughts as I continue through my career journey. Something like
Nice.
that. Commonalities, yeah, like Courtney said.
Yeah. Great summary, Courtney. Send a personal message and find commonalities or express sincere appreciation. Right. You can, everyone can imagine how that's very different than someone who's asking you for something, right? That cold outreach. Hey, yeah, do you need these services? Like I get that all the time.
I'm sure you get a lot of that. Yeah.
And then there are people where it's like we're following the formula. It's like step one, connect with something on their portfolio, and then I'll connect and be like, oh, thanks, and then like immediately after it's like a sale. So it's like I guess it just doesn't just stop at the first message. It's like keep that like genuine curiosity and interest like going all the way through. It's not just like I want something from you and I'm just waiting at the right moment to ask you for it.
Yeah, for sure. And honestly, like I didn't even do everything that I could do because I don't know, I'm weird. I don't like doing a lot of things online in this social media space, but that's to my disadvantage, honestly, because for people who are comfortable, liking stuff all over the place and commenting on people's posts, like you can speak to that, Devlin. I'm sure you've had people who, stand out to you because they provide meaningful commentary to the stuff that you work so hard to create.
Yeah, yeah, of course. I mean, the people who comment on it, some people comment on every single post, and I know their names, I know their background, all of that, just because they're like showing up for me like every single time I post something or messaging me or commenting on YouTube videos. So yeah, it definitely helps you get noticed. And I've heard people talk about that a lot. So that's just like if you're trying to connect with someone, it's like don't just cold outreach them, like engage with them for a while before going into the inbox or something, if you haven't asked. So
yeah.
While we're talking about this too, I prepared like a call to action to send people to your LinkedIn. You said it's okay for people to connect with you there, right? I think we can get you more than 22 connections.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, I'm gonna share that.
I just saw Rosina's. I'm not reading all these comments, but I saw Rosina's comment. Arena answered it. Yeah. So I don't try to send a message as the first thing. I try to just connect with them. So when you connect with someone, I think it's different on mobile, but there should be something where it asks you if you want to personalize the connection. That's what I do. I connect and send the message at the same time. It's just fewer steps, and it gets the relationship going quicker.
Yeah, it's kind of strange, but yeah, like I've been saying, you like connect, and then there's like an option in the drop down or something to like personalize invite, and then sometimes like if you're on desktop, it's just like part of the flow. It's like, would you like to personalize your invite? So
yeah,
good point. And then some people do use LinkedIn Premium. They're always giving away like free trials for that, and you get like message credits. But yeah, I think just the personalized invites should be fine for most networking. Good stuff. Well, yeah, let's get Ivan some nice personalized invite requests on LinkedIn.
You don't have to. You don't have to do it right now. I'll save you guys the trouble just because I said that right now. You don't have to this time. This is like.
All right, he knows where you're coming from this time.
I know, yeah.
but this is good. So I take it you started seeing some different reactions to your outreach once you started doing that. Like you started noticing the results, essentially. Once you start using this more like human approach to networking versus like the transactional approach.
Yeah, so it's not really like the results I saw, definitely numbers wise, I got, before it was like maybe 1 out of 10, was successful. But then I got to more like, okay, maybe 3 out of 10. Because let's face it, like, just because somebody doesn't, connect with you or doesn't respond to your message, it doesn't mean they're like, it could mean a lot of things, right? Maybe they're just busy, they got stuff going on,
Yeah.
So even if you go through this trouble, it doesn't mean that it's going to be totally successful because, we've all got stuff going on.
Right.
Or maybe they're not like on LinkedIn. But yeah, I did see higher success in the quality of connections. Because I could, some of the people that I started talking with in 2019, like I still check in with them regularly. They know where I am now and, they're excited for me. But I could do a better job because now I'm thinking of people who I haven't followed up with. And I still need to like, just like check in with them. And it's fun.
Yeah,
it's actually pretty fun.
Cool. That's cool that you still have the relationship going with a handful of these people. Yeah. So that's good. So when we started talking about this, you mentioned, you had your list of companies that you'd like really like to work for. I'm guessing these are your list of like the dream companies where you're like, I might not be qualified or ready to work here right now, but I know this is where I want to wind up. Can you talk to us a bit about how you created that list or?
So So everyone's gonna have a different approach to this, but for me personally, I knew, like thinking big, like dream wise. I knew I wanted to work at a company that uh, aligns with things that I believed just as a human being, not just as an employee. Because pretty much every company, if they're a decent company, they're going to agree to some basic professional principles. But I also wanted to work at a company that was trying to make a difference just in the world. So for my current company, and a lot of other great companies out there, stuff like what are we doing to help the environment? Like that's something that's important to me. Sustainability, uh, especially after last year here in the U.S. What was something that was important to me was racial justice, equality. What are we doing to actually make change so that everyone has equal opportunities in the workforce to get in and also to advance? That was something that was important to me. So I was looking for companies that aligns with stuff that I cared about outside of work, but that also are relevant to, work, right? Like, having enough money and having a chance to make a living for yourself the way you want it is pretty integral to how we function as a society. So those things were important to me. Um, Also, just the industry, looking at fun industries that I can personally relate to. Again, some people don't care about that, and I've read things that say that you shouldn't care about that because I don't know. There's so many different types of jobs out there, but for me, I was like, no, I want a company that I can relate to, like ideally that has maybe a product that I use or
Yeah.
that I have a history with. Um, so um, so that's kind of how I formulated my list. Oh, and also it was different back. It's different now, but like locations as well is something that I considered. Like where can
True.
I work? I know for a lot of people now, probably like remote is a must-have. So that's also an easy way to narrow down your list.
Yeah. Okay, good. So yeah, it sounds like you put a lot of thought into which companies made that short list, so to speak. And then you started, networking, initially not super successful, but then more successful with people. And
Mm.
maybe you stopped saying, "Oh yeah, do you have a job for me?" But it sounds like it led to some really cool, like serendipitous opportunities where you were having these like really cool face-to-face, like informational interviews, so to speak, or just like touring campuses and stuff like that. And
Oh
we don't have to
yeah,
get too far into it, but I know we talked a little bit about that, and it's just really cool. It
yeah.
goes to show, yeah, it starts as a simple conversation on LinkedIn, but you can actually learn a lot about like a company and yeah, just like a way to like dive deeper, see what the day to day is like without actually working there. Very
Yeah, I
useful.
mean, I'm cool with sharing that because I did tell you about that, and I just think it's so cool. But just quickly to backtrack to how to figure out your dream companies, also by talking with people is
Nice.
another way,
Yeah.
right? Just like feeling them out, having these conversations with them is another way to figure out. Oh yeah, like I know 5 people from this company. They're all super chill and hardworking. Like I want to work there.
Yeah.
But yeah, just to mention, talk about what you mentioned. It's just crazy how like if you don't try, you don't know how helpful and awesome other people can be. So one example was I was up in Dallas. I was interested. There are a couple major airlines headquartered in Dallas, and I was looking into people I could connect with at those airlines, and again mostly rejections. But there was this one person who was just incredibly nice. She ended up inviting me to the headquarters and just, yeah, giving me a tour and showing me what they're all about and their values. And it was just, I would have never expected that
Yeah.
before going into this whole process. So you can go from nothing to just by reaching out and continuing conversation. You can go to having meaningful discussions and yeah, even maybe something more.
Great. Yeah. Yeah. So networking, good idea. I think we're taking that away from this. Seems like it can help you, you know, determine which companies are the best fit for you, helps you learn more about the industry, make these connections who can then like refer you for open roles. Yeah, a lot of benefits to that. But okay, so you had your dream job list like kind of before you landed that first job, but you made it out. Sounds like you got a corporate ID / training role that you were able to, learn a lot, grow a lot as a corporate ID. I don't know if we want to focus so much on that since this is more about like landing your dream instructional design role, but maybe it's important to note that, yeah, it didn't just happen immediately, right? It's not like I'm a teacher and tomorrow I'm going to land my dream ID role at Apple, my favorite company in the world. You were like, yeah, it might take a little while to get here, but you're willing to like do the necessary steps to get where you want to be, right?
Yeah, definitely. I was intentionally planting the seeds for not just my immediate need, but for my future needs.
Nice.
So I think that's something that maybe I don't see talked enough about on places like LinkedIn. Like usually, rightly so, people think about, how can I make the initial transition or how can I get my first job?
Yeah.
But you can simultaneously do that and set yourself up for success, you know, years from now. So,
Great.
yeah.
Okay. Okay, so once you did land that first job with your single sample, at some point you put together a portfolio, right?
Yeah.
So can you talk to us a little bit about how that journey went? It seems like you knew that you would need one or that would help you in your journey. What was your approach to that?
Yeah, this guy named Devlin Peck told me it was important to have a portfolio, but also a bunch of other people too.
Yeah.
It was really, it was pretty obvious. Okay, I need this portfolio. So I had already started building it. Um, for definitely for this last round of applications, which was earlier this year, at the beginning of this year, um, it was actually kind of funny because it's not worth explaining. Nobody cares about this, but I started applying kind of spontaneously. It kind of just happened. Like I wasn't fully prepared for it,
Yeah.
so I kind of had to like figure out, in the limited time that I have, to try to make something happen. How can I maximize the value of my portfolio? So just to give people an idea, my portfolio was not that special. I know Devlin has an awesome series of videos that are like portfolio review videos. Is that what they're called?
Yeah. Yeah, they're more
Um,
like portfolio showcases at this point, but yeah, portfolio
Showcases.
reviews. There's like a YouTube playlist with all of them. Wish we
Yeah.
could have gotten yours in there before it was taken down, but
So,
we'll have to paint the picture for people.
so I took mine down, but just I want to point people in the direction of those videos because every single one of those portfolios was better than mine. Mine was literally just 2 pages. It was just the first page was just my projects that I wanted people to see, and it was just a simple WordPress. So free. I didn't really do anything special there. Just a simple WordPress page, portfolio samples, first page, and then the second page was just an about me page, where I, talked about who I am, what my values are, what I'm good at, my experience, and personally, I also included like some photos because I wanted to like. Um, it's so hard, in these days, to make that connection, right? Because we can't see each other. Even throughout the interview process, it's hard to, truly show who you are. So I wanted, whoever saw my portfolio to truly see who I am and what matters to me. Stuff like, yeah, like what I actually enjoy in life that's not work, and having a sense of humor and all that. So back to my work samples. They were just very like they weren't like super huge, but I think based on the really good feedback that I got throughout my last round of interviews, like all the companies, pretty much all the companies, gave me good feedback on the portfolio, and I think what set it apart was solid samples. Like the samples themselves were polished, but also I did what I think you recommended, which was, and I think you have in your portfolio, just like going pretty in depth on your process,
Right.
for how you built these pieces. What was the situation? What tools did you use? Um, just walking people through your process and then ending with the results. Like, what are the results of this piece? How did it impact the learners? How did it impact the business?
Nice.
And that was great for me to do, because I think writing is probably one of my strengths, right? I'm an English major,
Right.
so I saw that as my key strength. So I really leaned into that part, and I think that was probably one of the strengths of my portfolio, just going in depth into those pieces. If I had like a graphic design backgrounds, then I would make my site look really, really nice, to
Yeah.
showcase that.
Yeah. Yeah. Great point. Portfolio is a great place to highlight your strengths, but yeah, you were downplaying your portfolio a little bit. You're like, it's not super great. It's just 2 pages, but yeah, I mean, it seems like it was really, really effective for you in this most recent like job search or series of applications. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, and a part that inspired me, when I first saw it was just like the human element of the about page and how it seems like that resonated with people in the job search as well. So, that's what I've been like. It just reiterated that like you want to let a little bit of yourself shine through, like make it easier for people to connect with you, maybe show a little bit of who you are, right? So
Yeah.
maybe
And
that's a risk.
kind of, as a kind of paradoxical to that, maybe who you are is not showing all that. Um,
True.
so, so like stay true to who you are in terms of the portfolio. That would be my
Good
advice.
point.
Yeah, for me, writing a verbal expression, written language is important to me. It's part of who I am. And having fun at work is part of who I am. So
Nice.
as well as, just my process. So I highlighted those in my portfolio.
Nice. And yeah, it seems like it was really effective at letting people see kind of who you are and imagining what it would be like to connect with you in person and all of that. So it was like
Yeah.
consistent, I guess. It sounds like if someone goes on your portfolio site and then they speak to you, it's like, oh yeah, I kind of already have like a relationship with this person because I've been on their site and I was able to see what
Yeah.
they're doing and see what they're passionate about and all of that.
Yeah, actually, yeah, yeah. I like how you phrased that. You phrased that better than I did. Yeah,
Cool.
you basically part of the intention was, yeah, having them feel like they kind of already have that relationship with me.
Nice.
So in the interviews, we can move faster. We can have more of a conversation rather than an
Yeah.
interview.
Yeah, exactly. And that's one of the big benefits of portfolios too. Like once they've already reviewed your portfolio and they're like, this person can do the work, like they kind of know their stuff. And it just serves as like a really good like basis for further conversations. Like, oh, I really love this project. Can you tell us more about how you did this or something? Like there's already a baseline of like competence, I would say, like going into the interviews in a lot of cases. Um, but okay, good. So the portfolio helped a lot. It seems like it wasn't super exhausting or anything to put together the portfolio website itself. That seems like the message you're sending about that. Like it's pretty simple, the portfolio website itself, but you did put a lot of work into the samples and talking through your process of how you designed and developed them.
Yeah, like I hope this is something people can relate with. Like you mentioned that it seems like I'm downplaying my portfolio. And honestly, I think that comes from a little bit of insecurity that maybe a lot of us can identify with. It's kind of nerve wracking for someone like me to like say, here, I built this. This is hire me, So that for me personally, it's kind of nerve wracking, and I can say, it's not good enough. But I hope the takeaway for everyone watching is that it's normal to feel that way, but it doesn't mean that other people will feel the same way. And going back to my first job, all it takes is just one course potentially, for just people to see, okay, yeah, this person knows what they're doing. I want to talk to them.
Nice.
That's all it is. It's not a big deal. So, sometimes you kind of have to get over yourself in order to
Yeah.
advance to get what you want.
Yeah, and it seems like you had some decent degree of confidence and self-assurance because you kind of committed. You put in these applications, you got where you wanted to be, and yeah, it
I
seems
guess so.
natural to have some self-doubt along the way. But I mean, I think we talked about it, and you did say like you were kind of like surprised it all worked out at one point. But maybe not.
So, well, with networking, it was surprising how well that worked out. But yeah, actually, yeah, you're right. God, this year's moving so fast. But
Yeah.
yeah, thinking back to like I don't know February, March. Yeah, one thing I wanted to share with people was so these companies that I was interviewing with were they were all companies pretty much that if you asked me when I was a teacher, like, did I have a shot with these? Like, it was no. But if I showed you like the top 10 or 15 companies that I would ever want to work with, I ended up interviewing with like 4 or 5 of them.
Wow.
So that's pretty good. Like,
Yeah.
I can
Well,
honestly say I'm kind of proud of that.
no, yeah, that is impressive. When you told me that,
Yeah.
I'm like, dang, okay, yeah, you're yeah, getting all those interviews, and it sounds like doing really well in them as well. So let's talk about how you managed to land those. Like, of course, the portfolio helped, but maybe before people even see your portfolio, they're probably going to be seeing your resume. And I know you did a lot of research and careful thinking and execution with your own resume. So can you talk to us a bit about that journey, the research you did, the actionable advice you have, what you think worked and didn't work?
Yeah, for sure. So I mean, I promise Devlin's not paying me, but I'm pretty sure Devlin, you have some good resources on on resumes. So definitely check out that and other free resources that are out there. Um, but also, so I did that. I also, like I mentioned before, I sought out advice from other people. Um, like I had a couple recruiter friends who helped me out, and I got their feedback. Just like anything, it doesn't mean like their feedback is 100% the way to go, but it gives you some ideas for what people are looking for in how to structure your resume. I looked at, gosh, what's that site? There's a site where I think if you Google like UX design resumes or something, like there's a site that has a bunch of really cool examples. A lot of those are over the top for what we do. You probably want to make yours more straightforward, but in terms of concision, keeping things concise to the point, but also sharing a bit of who you are and your brand, I think that's important too. But yeah, in terms of the actual words, that's the most important thing. And for me, for this last round, I had 5 years of experience. I kept it to one page. But what was the most important thing for me was if you look at the jobs that you're interested in, you want to tailor your resume to those jobs. And in my case, I think it might not be worth it to a lot of people, but for me, like literally every single job, if I really wanted it, if I really could see myself working there, that specific job got its own resume,
Nice.
tailored specifically to that one. And I don't know, maybe this is too much, but what I did was I did like a word analysis for like, okay, instructional, how many times does that word appear in this resume? And it's like, okay, 5 times. That's pretty high. Let me make that's an obvious example. Or like curriculum, or a specific skill like I don't know, storyline. And if it appear the more times it appears, there, the stronger I'm going to highlight it in my resume.
Mm.
And
Okay,
I
so you're saying, just so we're
yeah,
clear, you're trying to mirror like the frequency of these words like in your resume to the job listing. So if they're using it like a lot, you're trying to use it a lot in your resume for that listing.
Basically, it's not like one for one. It's not
Right,
like
right.
let me make sure I mention it the same number of times. But it's just being conscious of that and how you phrase certain bullets. So there's that aspect. Whereas I might have my perfect instructional designer resume that includes something simple like the word curriculum, right?
Yeah.
But maybe the job that I want doesn't include that word at all. So to me, that's kind of like a wasted word. Maybe they
Right.
use another word that means something similar to curriculum, but it's not curriculum. Well, it doesn't exactly match up. Let me switch to whatever word they're using. And that helps me get past the applicant tracking system, the ATS,
Right.
that, at these big companies, if you're interested in a big company, they're all using an ATS. They're getting hundreds of applications a day for any given job, and the recruiter is not going to look at all of them. So you want to get past the ATS, past the computer, and then when the recruiter, whoever is reading your resume, I want every single bullet points to exactly hit on something that's on the job description.
Nice.
If you have one bullet that's, it sounds great and it's something that you're proud of, but it doesn't directly, address something that they're looking for. I mean, I guess there's an argument to be made. I'm sure people will disagree with me and saying keep that. But either there's a way to word it differently to make sure that it does address something they're looking for, or just cut it because it's just taking away, mind space from the other bullet points that better showcase your abilities for this particular job.
Yeah. This is such good resume advice. So it's not just like making each bullet fit for like an instructional design role, right? We're not just like translating our teaching experience or whatever teaching into ID speak, but we're going even more specific than that, like one-to-one. Like if I really want this job, I'm designing my resume completely for this specific job posting. And then as we've been saying, yeah, that's going to help you get it in front of a real human because the applicant tracking system will notice this person seems like a 99% match for this role because you're using all of that same language.
Yeah.
So that is just really smart. And I think this is a good time to mention if you're getting some value out of Ivan's resume tips here, I think we're going to do a full 1 hour like resume workshop in a couple of months where Ivan and I are going to kind of convert maybe a teacher resume, maybe just a standard not so great ID resume into like a really specific, targeted, effective resume. So we're going to apply all of this live. So we're aiming for October for that. And yeah, Ivan seems like the perfect person to do this with because he did all the research and he executed it very well. And we have practical evidence or, real evidence of that. So I'm excited for that. But plugging that future session is over. Well, that's good. So, but yeah, so it worked really well for you though, it sounds like. Because you had these
Yeah.
connections, right? You had been networking, but you didn't even like call on these referrals or anything to kind of find success with these interviews.
Kind of.
Okay.
Kind of. I do want to elaborate on that. So for a lot of these, something else that surprised me from this round was the diversity in ways that I kind of got those interviews. So sometimes I just applied, and again I thought, nothing's going to happen here. I'm just kind of going for it.
Yeah.
But then I was surprised, like, oh, they responded. I got an interview, and I'm pretty confident in my interviewing skills. So for me, I'm like, okay, I got an interview. I basically got an offer. Like that kind of confidence also helps. But some other times, I think maybe once or twice, like a recruiter from the company also like reached out to me, and I was like, oh, okay, this has never really happened before. So the process got started that way. And then other times, yes, I did apply to the job without a referral, like a proper referral, which if you do have referrals, if you do have somebody who can vouch for you at the company, definitely do that. I did have that, but honestly, I thought like this is not going to work. So I didn't do it that way. I just sent in my application. But I did have people at that company who I'd spoken with before, and they knew what I was about, at a couple of companies that I would love to work at, that I can think of. So it wasn't a surprise when I told them, "Hey, guess what? I applied to this job and I got
Yeah.
an interview." And it's on your team, or it's on a team that's related to the work that you do. Isn't that exciting?
Yeah.
So because you've already talked to them a long time ago, you've built some sort of camaraderie. um, they're excited for you. They're like, "Oh, cool, this person has shown me that they're interested in working here in the past. They
Mm-hmm.
seem pretty cool. They seem to know what they're doing, and now they got an interview, which seems to indicate that other people at this company also think this person knows what they're doing."
Yeah.
So now you're no longer on this journey alone. You've got a buddy with you, or maybe several buddies with you, who are rooting for your success. So that's basically what happened with my current company. I had a few people who were rooting for me, and I was asking them questions. I was saying, "Oh, I'm pretty nervous," and they're like, "Oh yeah, that's normal. Be
Yeah.
sure to do this, talk about this. You'll be fine." And so that also is part of what makes it special. Just feeling like you're not alone, and even if they aren't like the hiring manager, um, one of my best connections at my current company turned out to have worked with and was actually friends with two of my interviewers. So that kind of connection was just pretty wild to me, because I had started this connection through LinkedIn 2 years ago.
Yeah.
And then just the way it worked out, it wasn't like exactly, I wasn't working on this person's team, but it's crazy how things are connected, and
Yeah.
things can work out like that.
Nice. And yeah, you started it from this more like human space like perspective too. And then like that's the kind of support you're receiving. Like people are actually like invested in your success. Like they want to see you succeed. Like because it's like an actual like kind of
Yeah.
professional friendship or relationship going on instead of just this like transactional kind of weak type of relationship maybe.
Yeah, and I'm going to go back to sharing your work. That's really important, and something
Yeah.
that is one of the best pieces of advice that I got when I was making the transition, because I had shared my work in the past. These people could vouch for me, not just that you know that I was nice, but
Yeah.
they could say, "Oh yeah, this person, a year or two ago, they sent me something that they wanted feedback on. Yeah, they know what they're doing."
Nice.
So even just that sentence, if that goes in the ear of somebody who, you know, you could potentially be working directly with, um, you know, probably other people who are interviewing don't have that. I'm going to go out on a limb and say that.
Yeah, and it's like your
So it's an
reputation.
advantage.
Yeah, like you've been building a reputation for yourself like for much longer. And even if it was just like sharing on LinkedIn, like it doesn't even have to be like a personal connection, I guess. I mean, it's smart to build it in that very like effective way, or like like specific, intentional way, I should say. But that can happen too. Just sharing your work on LinkedIn, and someone's like, "Oh, yeah, yeah, oh, I've seen them on LinkedIn. They share some great stuff. Like they know what they're doing." But yeah, so great tip about sharing your work and just kind of building your credibility and all of that in the industry.
Yeah. And at
I
the
did want
very,
to. Oh,
I was just going to say, at the very least, it shows that you were interested in the company and the work,
true. Yeah.
which even that is pretty important to companies.
Yeah. Yeah. Good points. When you made that comment though about interviewing and about how you're so confident about interviewing, it got a lot of people's attention. They're
Oh,
like,
really?
"How do we get that same confidence? Like, can I even teach an
Oh, yeah.
interview class and stuff like this?" So, can you talk like why? How did you become so confident with the interviews? Is that just a lot of preparation and practice, or what do you suggest for people who want to build their?
Uh, yeah. So, I guess I have pretty decent amount of interview experience. Um, what should I say that would be helpful to people? Um, Number one thing to feel confident in an interview experience, I would say, is knowing yourself. Like, that's knowing yourself and practicing. Number one thing. You know, you could talk about the company, the job requirements. You can talk about, you know, why you think you're the best person, but you really have to do a deep dive into who you are, all your whys, like why you do this, why you did that in the past, and really anticipating, you know, what questions will come up. Um, I I lost some sleep preparing for if it was like something that I really wanted.
Yeah.
You know, I'm willing to really do a deep dive into myself, um, and the reason for that is, you know, that you can anticipate some questions, but you don't know exactly what they're going to ask, right? That's part of where the nerves come in, right?
Yeah.
If you got a list of like, hey, here are the 7, 8 questions they're going to ask, you're like, okay, I got this. I can prepare for that.
Hmm.
But you don't know. So if you think of like the power dynamics in an interview, you know, the interviewer knows what they're going to ask. You don't. So what's left for you? Well, what's left for you is to know yourself. And that's something that the interviewer doesn't know, but they want to know. So that's something else. Just like keeping in mind, you know, they're taking time out of their workday because they think you're worth talking to, and they think you might be a potentially great fit, right? You've gotten past all those. You've gotten past the ATS. You've gotten past other resumes, and they think you're worth spending 30 minutes to an hour of their day, right? So use that, know who you are, and practice answering different types of questions about your experience, about what you're interested in. Um, Gosh, there's so much that goes into it, but yeah, that's the biggest thing. Just practice. Another thing is, you know, you only get so many interview questions. I think it's pretty important to it's easier to please someone and impress someone if you go beyond whatever they're asking.
Mm.
So, you know, if they ask something like, I don't know, what's a common interview question? Like, okay, like what's your design process? Like,
Yeah.
probably you'll get that question if you're in an ID interview. What's your design process? So you could answer the question, or you could answer the question and also add on a real life example of how you design something.
Nice.
And you could even go beyond that and add on how it was successful. So you
Mm.
can say, okay, here's my design process. And a great example of that was this project that I worked on a couple months ago that helps the company, you know, do this with this many employees. And in the end, the VP of whatever was really impressed and decided that, you know, more people should see this, you know, something like that
Yeah, that is
um,
really smart.
can really, yeah, set you apart.
Nice. So yeah, instead of just talking about it, like actually giving the evidence, the real world examples, the results from those examples to back it up, I can see how that would really make you seem credible. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
smart.
And another thing, sorry, I'm just like
No,
keep
this is
thinking of
good.
these things. Um, Another thing that helps me just confidence wise is thinking about it as a conversation. So it's not an interview; it's a conversation. Like it's
Yeah.
you getting to know somebody, just like you get to know like a potential friend at a party. Like it's basically that you're trying to get to know each other. So I really do my best to, you know, not just answer a question, but also, you know, follow up whatever I'm saying with a question back at them.
Hmm.
So that keeps more of a conversation flow going. You know, I usually people like talking about themselves and what they do. So
Hmm.
it gives them an opportunity to feel good and share more about what they do, but it also shows that you're interested, and that you've done your homework, and that, you know, hopefully that you're not a pain to work with, because you keep a conversation going and you're genuinely interested in what they do. So that also helps just psychologically, I think.
Yeah, yeah, I think that shift in perspective, it definitely helped me with interviewing in the past, where instead of like, okay, it's like a test and I need to get all of the right answers, to where it's more of like, yeah, it's a conversation. I need to show that I'm like competent, but it's a conversation. And I don't know if I've
Yeah.
heard that specific advice before about like following up each question with a question of your own. Can you give an example of that? So when someone asks you about your process, would you follow that up with like, does that sound like it aligns with what we would be doing on this team or something like that?
Okay, yeah, that's a really good example. Yeah, yeah, pretty much exactly that. Just um, I can't elaborate on that basically. Yeah, if they
Okay, cool.
ask you
But
about
just,
your
yeah,
process, you
like a
answer it.
curiosity for what they do, what the team does, what you would be doing in that role. So instead of like waiting for the end, like here are my 3 prepared questions, it's just like following up, wherever it makes sense to do so in the flow of the conversation. That's smart. That's cool.
Yeah, yeah. It's a question like the one you just said, like, does that align with what you do? Or is that something that you could see, working on your team? Those are really great questions. And it helps you also gain more clarity, because, most likely they'll say, if it works out, they'll say, oh, yeah, yeah, that does sound good. Or if they say, okay, we're looking more for this kind of person who has this kind of experience, well, then if that's you, you can elaborate,
Yeah.
and clear things up for that person.
Yeah. That's smart.
Yeah,
Yeah, it gets you like feedback as you go so you can adjust as needed.
yeah.
Great advice. Yeah, I feel like, yeah, you you have so much to share with people who are going through this. So yeah, let's get some applause emojis in the chat. I think we're wrapping this up now. We have a couple of minutes left. And is it okay if people follow up with you on LinkedIn or ask any questions? I know you're really busy, so maybe you won't get to it immediately or something. But
No, yeah, like I'm super happy to help. So yeah, just if
cool.
you have any more questions, for sure.
All right. So connect with Ivan on LinkedIn. I've seen a lot of people sharing their own LinkedIn URLs, and I saw some talk about the Slack, so I'll share that call to action as well. So feel free to hop on in the Slack community if you want. But we're going to be here every week, and stay tuned for that session in October that we're going to do with Ivan on resume critiquing or creation, whatever we want to call it. That'll be good. So thank you, Ivan. This was super helpful. I learned some things, and I know all of us did too. So thank you a lot, and we'll talk soon,
Mhm.
Ivan. And thanks to everyone who came. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone.